This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
WHO confirms 4 people killed during an attack on Ebola treatment centers in the eastern DRC. The future of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development hangs in the balance on day 2 of the Addis Ababa meeting. And Macron says all options are open for French troops after 13 are killed in Mali. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. In business, more trouble for South African Airways as a leading travel agency halts sales of its tickets. And in sports, Proteas opening batsman Dean Elgar speaks on the upcoming England series. In our top story, the World Health Organization has confirmed that 4 health workers were killed in attacks on 2 Ebola response centers in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Militia fighters are behind the attacks, which also left 5 people injured, including a staff member of the World Health Organization. The WHO chief says the attacks were fueled by anger, the perceived failure of the army and the UN peacekeepers to protect civilians from Islamist group, the ADF. The WHO fears the attacks could revive Ebola, which has so far shown a decline in the region.
Violence and unrest have hampered the health authorities' response to the second worst Ebola epidemic on record in the DRC. Mai militia fighters and local residents have attacked health facilities, sometimes because they believe Ebola does not exist, and in other cases because of resentment that they have not benefited from the influx of donor funding. Victims of the attack included a member of a vaccination team, 2 drivers and a police officer. Most of the 5 people injured were from Congo's Ministry of Health.
Last night, 2 attacks in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo killed 4 workers responding to the Ebola outbreak and injured 5 others. The attacks occurred overnight on a shared living camp in Biakato mines and an Ebola response coordination office in Mangina. We're heartbroken that people have died in the line of duty as they work to save others.
Tedros said more people could die from Ebola if health workers are not able to do their job safely. New infections have been on the decline since August, with just 70 cases identified in all of October, medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières said.
We call on everyone who has a role to play to end this cycle of violence. Any interruption to the response could lead to a resurgence in the outbreak, and more people will die as a consequence. We will continue to work with the DRC government, partners and MONUSCO to ensure the security of our staff and other health workers.
Thursday's attacks came amid a spate of massacres committed by suspected Islamist rebels in the region who are believed to have killed at least 80 people in the past month, UN figures revealed. As a result of the threat, the WHO and the UN Children's Fund on Tuesday evacuated dozens of their staff working on the Ebola epidemic from the town of Beni. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The 13th EGAD Heads of State and Governments Assembly has begun in Addis Ababa. The meeting is also being attended by representatives from the African Union, the UN, the EU and other partner organizations. The agenda includes discussions on the situation in South Sudan, Somalia, as well as the Gulf of Aden. This ordinary meeting will also decide the next country to chair EGAD, taking over from the incumbent chair, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Well, let's get to more now from Girum Chala. He joins us live from Addis Ababa. Girum, to begin with, what is the latest from the EGAD meeting?
Lindy, the 13th Ordinary Summit of the EGAD Heads of State is underway now. Remember, this is the first time since 2008 that these heads of state came together for ordinary meeting. Other meetings so far we've seen for the last almost 11 years were emergency meetings to talk mostly about peace and security issues. But today they've made to do ordinary stuff. For example, of talking about re-establishment of EGAD and formal structure formation of this intergovernmental authority for development itself. In the morning, we've seen a measure happening. The executive secretary replacement has been made. The outgoing executive secretary, Engineer Mahbub Maalim, who has served the EGAD secretary for the last 11.5 years, has left his position for the former Ethiopian Foreign Minister Workana Gabeyo himself. So EGAD has now got its new executive secretary. His name is Dr. Workana Gabeyo. This has been seen in the morning. And by the way, this meeting has been attended except the President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. Other regional leaders are here. Djibouti President, Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Uganda at the same time.
So, Girum, perhaps a changing of the guard for EGAD, one might say. What else is on the agenda? What are some of the key issues that you think the leaders will be particularly focusing on?
Well, the leaders in India are focusing on, obviously, on the peace and security situation in the region, more particularly on the situation in South Sudan. You remember that the revitalized peace agreement has been signed last year in September between the South Sudanese opposing parties. And according to that agreement, the former Vice President and rebel leader Riek Machar was supposed to go back to South Sudan and form that transitional government until elections are coming to the country. Unfortunately, the leaders are disappointed by the unfoldings in the country, as this revitalized peace agreement is not holding any water. So discussions are being held on that area. That is the outstanding agenda at the moment, and they should also decide the fate of Riek Machar himself, what should happen about him, and what kind of responsibilities should each and every government take in order to make South Sudan a country that is coming out of the woods and deliver back to its people, especially in the aspect of peace. The other issue is the situation in Somalia, again another peace and security issue, and the Gulf of Aden at the same time. So these are outstanding issues being discussed. Now they are in a closed session after the opening ceremony. Lindy.
Well, of course, Girum, South Sudan's EGAD's handling of the South Sudan situation has certainly drawn some attention towards the chair. The US even saying just a few days ago that the EGAD chair did not do enough to push South Sudan's leaders to complete that peace agreement on time. Has there been any response to this so far?
Well, as you've said, the US and other parties complain about the lacking of perhaps motivation from the EGAD side of pushing the leaders of EGAD, the stakeholders, not only the government in Juba and other stakeholders, in order for them to implement and push forward what is intended to happen in the country when it comes to perhaps forming this transitional government of unity, that all-inclusive government in South Sudan, all the way up to the election, the general election in the country that is expected to come out as per the revitalized peace agreement. But the story from the EGAD side is different. You know that JMEC, this implementing body, also the one that oversees every aspect of this revitalized agreement when it comes to its implementation, has been working day and night and reporting almost in everyday basis that the problem is not from the push part, the problem is from the implementers themselves, the stakeholders of South Sudan, who were supposed to come at the front. That's at least what we are hearing in the meeting host today, that they are saying EGAD, the African Union, the United Nations and other stakeholders, including the European Union, are behind this, including China, are behind this in order to make the what has been written on the paper, what has been signed on the paper in form of the agreement, a reality on the ground. But there is lack of commitment. That's what we are hearing from the diplomats here from South Sudan, is all parties. So the complaints are here and there, but at least what we're expecting, Lindy, from the 30th Ordinary Summit of EGAD, and as it is the agenda, one of the important agenda items is that the decisions after this meeting is going to recommit the people of South Sudan, also those people who have committed themselves to sign, to implement what has been agreed, at least to form this transitional government all the way to the elections, Lindy.
Thank you so much, Girum Chala, joining us there live from Addis Ababa. Now, pro-government media in Rwanda has condemned what it's described as the escalating harassment of Rwandans in Uganda. This follows the deportation of 32 nationals by neighboring Uganda over questions on their immigration status. They were among 200 Rwandans reportedly arrested by Uganda on Monday. Also deported alongside them were 3 Congolese nationals. The expulsion of the Rwandese followed that of 24 Ugandans working in Rwanda the previous week. The expulsions come despite an accord signed in August between the two countries to normalize ties. Meanwhile, talks due to take place with Uganda on the 18th of November to defuse tensions under the agreement were postponed to a new date that has yet to be announced. Well, CGTN's Michael Baleke has been following the story for us. He joins us now live from Kampala. Michael, Rwandese media is calling the arrests on Monday and the expulsion of citizens as harassment of Rwandese nationals. What is the position, according to Ugandan authorities, on this matter?
Hey, Lindy, this is no surprise and it's not a surprise at all. The reason for for the 10-month Rwanda blockade stems from the fact that Rwanda has for long accused Uganda of harassing its citizens. And Uganda, of course, insists that the Monday raid, that was the early morning raid on Monday, was in response to increased calls of insecurity in the area, that is in Kisoro, around the southwestern border area to Rwanda and the DR Congo. And police say that this was a joint security operation which actually involved also the military, and over 200 people were arrested, and many of these had no identification. And when screening was done, of course, about 32 Rwandans who had entered into Uganda illegally were deported. These included 3 DR Congo nationals. But security says some Ugandans also who were found to have who are criminal elements were actually charged, and they are now in prison. But of course, this is what has been going on for the last few couple of months, and it has nothing to do with harassments, according to the Uganda security teams. Lindy?
Nevertheless, the events of Monday morning would certainly have left many people feeling somewhat shaken. How are ordinary citizens in Kampala, and indeed those Rwandese that continue to live in Uganda, how are they reacting to these arrests and expulsions?
Lindy, what is interesting is that Rwandans living in communities within Uganda, just like most Ugandans, life here is quite normal. Maybe because it's a fluid topic and not very many are coming out to speak about it. But some of the communities, continue to exist comfortably with each other. Many think this is a fight between superiors, President Yoweri Museveni and President Kagame. Many Rwandan nationals actually, however, we have talked to, have not expressed any fear living here in Uganda. Actually, what they fear is to go back home because they're not sure whether they will be let back into Uganda. Many others, of course, like I said earlier, don't want to talk about it. They don't want to speak about these issues, but they want them resolved so they can get back their lives as it were.
Michael, you talk about this being a fight between superiors, and we know that there have been attempts by the leaders of Rwanda and Uganda to reduce tensions and normalize relations. But is there any progress on that front since those agreements were signed, the Angola agreements?
Indeed, like you mentioned earlier, of course, in August, an ad hoc committee was appointed to implement a pact signed by Uganda and Rwanda. This was in Angola. And of course, Rwanda called off a follow-up meeting to this Luanda agreement after, of course, Kampala sent a protest note. This were after the recent killings where the Rwanda security officials killed 2 Ugandans who were accused of smuggling tobacco into Rwanda. And of course, these misunderstandings, now we see Uganda is warning. After Rwanda also deported some Ugandans, Uganda is warning its citizens not to go to Rwanda. Rwanda is also warning its citizens not to cross the borders until these misunderstandings are cleared. And of course, a day before, as you may know, that's the day before Monday, Rwanda authorities picked up Ugandans and they were dumped at the border. And we understand there were no charges actually brought against these people. And yesterday, while commissioning the DSTV National Command Center here in Kampala, President Museveni strongly warned external threats that he would deal with them. We're not sure if President Museveni's statement was aiming for Rwanda or other aggressors, but Foreign Affairs Minister says the Luanda Pact still holds and discussions are still happening, and we shall get, they think a new date will be set to settle this agreement.
Well, let's hope so. Thank you so much. Michael Baleke joining us there live from Kampala, Uganda, on those tensions between Rwanda and Uganda.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Let's go to Algeria now, where official election campaigns kicked off earlier this month, and with them, the number of protests is on the rise. Authorities have been detaining ever more demonstrators. Since February, police have arrested scores of activists. Now they're detaining leaders of the pro-democracy movement ahead of the presidential polls. Tens of thousands are still taking to the streets almost every week in peaceful mass protests. Back in April, demonstrators managed to dislodge Algeria's longest-serving president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, after 20 years in power. However, many don't believe that the upcoming presidential election will change anything unless the remaining old guard of political leaders step aside. Both protesters and police have mostly avoided violence since the protests began, but tension is rising. On Thursday, family members of detained demonstrators called for their immediate release.
We want them to set our children free. We are tired. We want them to set our children free. We won't stop, and we won't stop claiming our children. They arrested them, and that's unfair. We won't stop until they set them free.
We went out today to support families of the detainees. There are too many of them. Their numbers are rising every day. We are in a state of no rights, and that has never happened in the world. People are arrested unfairly. Some of them are in jail because they expressed themselves on Facebook. Where are we headed to? Set us free and give us our independence.
Vote counting in Namibia's election entered day 2 with no changes in the National Assembly rankings and a shift in the presidential elections. Angelo Coppola reports from Windhoek.
With a little over a quarter of the constituencies confirmed and accounted for, SWAPO continues with its dominant position, with 65.8% of the vote thus far. They're followed by the PDM with 15.3%, and trailing in third place is the LPM at 6.3%. The parties have held their positions overnight. However, there was an overnight shift in the presidential elections, which has since changed back again. First place is still the SWAPO leader, Giangop, with around 53.8%. The independent candidate, Itula, has 29.8%. The opposition leader, Vanani, is at 6%. And the LPM Swatboy with 5.3%. Now, analysts are watching that battle for third place closely. Also keeping a keen eye on the results are the observer missions. Behind me, as you can see, the room is being set up for their briefing on how these elections have gone. They will declare them fair and free, or we'll hear otherwise. We will let you know more about this later. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Windhoek, Namibia.
Time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Senior doctors in Zimbabwe say the rising death of patients during strike action is a silent genocide. And what are the options for parents amid an obesity crisis among adolescents?
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
36 bodies have been recovered after mudslides tore through West Pokot County, Kenya, in Kenya almost a week ago. That's according to the government, which has revised downwards the number of people displaced to 1,500. A major reconstruction effort is now underway. CGTN's Robert Nagila has that report.
The cleanup has begun. 5 days after a landslide devastated West Pokot County, women and children clear mud from their market. The government has now revised the death toll downwards.
We're working with a figure of about 43 that are dead. That is confirmed. We're also working with a figure of 1,500 of people that have been displaced, and they're in different camps across the entire region.
And as the recovery operation begins to wind down, a massive reconstruction effort is underway in the county to open up vital roads and linkages. This is the main highway to the border with South Sudan, a vital supply route for the landlocked country. Engineers and construction workers are working round the clock to reopen it. The government says $3 million worth of farmland in the county was destroyed, while the total cost for infrastructure across the country stands at $200 million. 5 major bridges in West Pokot collapsed, with 20-foot bridges washed away.
From tomorrow running to Monday, Tuesday next week, all our bridges will be tested, those ones that are still standing, to check the integrity, see whether there will be any repairs. All the 5 other bridges, big bridges that were swept out, they are going to do the estimates.
A Chinese company has already begun work on one of the bridges that collapsed. The only way to get across, as we found out, was wading across the river with help from locals. Dozens of roads are still in a bad state or flooded. It may be a while before the true cost to the local economy is quantified. An evacuation order is still in effect, so many of the displaced are yet to begin rebuilding. A good number may never return to their land, now considered too dangerous for habitation. Robert Nagila, CGTN, West Pokot.
Senior doctors in Zimbabwe say avoidable deaths during a protracted and ongoing strike are a silent genocide. On September 6th, junior doctors went on strike, protesting what they called eroded wages. That action plunged Zimbabwe's health sector into an ongoing crisis. CGTN's Farai Makutoya has that story.
More than 400 doctors have been fired for taking part in the strike, which has collapsed the public health system.
The people of Zimbabwe must appreciate that there are no public hospitals at this time. The hospitals are not there. We have these buildings, but they're just buildings and not hospitals.
Specialist consultants who had been treating emergency cases since the industrial action began have now withdrawn their services over delays in addressing their junior counterparts' grievances.
The doctors' fight is more than just about money. They're also agitating for better conditions of service inside those wards and for provision of the tools of their trade.
You go into wards which deal with critically ill patients. They have no suction machines for clearing the patient's airway. You go into theatre, you want to do an operation. The most commonly used glove size is size 7 and size 7.5. You are given size 9. These are probably gloves which came in as samples, which are not appropriate. You request for a certain drug, you are told it's not available. You go in to do an operation, you open somebody, right in the midst of an operation, you now want a suture for closing. You're told, sorry, that suture is not available. So choose some compromised one. There are conditions which can be easily treated, which people are actually dying from, because the government is not willing to buy the necessary things, or has neglected to buy the things which are needed in order to be able to run the systems.
The doctors have equated the unfolding emergency to a silent genocide.
We are saying, if the government is not prepared to provide materials that are needed for us to save these lives, then let these patients stay in their homes, let them die in the comfort of their homes, in the presence of their relatives, without us being required to watch them die.
Government insists it can't afford the huge wage demands, but is committed to equipping health facilities. It says it's open for negotiations, but only if doctors return to work, and has invited the dismissed to reapply for their jobs. Farai Makutoya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The World Health Organization has released a report on insufficient physical activity among adolescents. The report shows that insufficient physical activity is one of the 10 leading risk factors for global mortality. In South Africa, the Health Ministry says young people are increasingly consuming more unhealthy foods, sugar-sweetened beverages, and leading generally inactive lifestyles. The result is obesity and undernutrition. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
South Africa is battling undernutrition, hunger, and obesity. Millions of children are eating too little of what they need, and millions are eating too much of what they don't need, and that is laced with physical inactivity amongst this group. According to the World Health Organization, obesity, particularly in the urban settings, is a major risk factor for diabetes 2, high blood pressure, and heart attacks.
So we have a perfect storm currently that's resulting in children being ill and becoming sicker as a consequence of not eating the right foods or not having enough to eat, as well as insufficient physical activity. Now, those two in combination is a perfect storm for a range of diseases that are not only confined to childhood, but follow children into adulthood.
Poverty plays a huge role in this issue.
So there's some estimates that suggest that about 6 million South African children go to bed hungry on a fairly regular basis. And that reflects on levels of poverty in the country. And those children will be eating too little. And when they do eat, they will be eating often the wrong things. And when I say the wrong things, I mean they will be eating processed foods, because processed foods like polony, etc., are cheaper than the more nutritious foods. So that's one of the challenges we have.
It's a real concern, and the South African government has introduced some interventions. These include the initiation of a sugar tax. It's designed to reduce sugar intake from sugar-sweetened beverages by upping the price with a 20% fiscal tax.
We call it a health promotion levy. It promotes health. And that has actually reduced the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages. in the short time we've had it in place, which is just under 2 years. And the other consequence is that the National Treasury has been able to generate some additional revenue, around 3 billion rands in the last 2 years. The other thing we are doing, of course, is working with the food industry to, for example, get the fast food industry, the restaurants and the takeaways, to reduce size portions, the portions of sizes, to offer water as an alternative to all this sugar-sweetened beverages.
Obesity shortens a person's lifespan and affects their quality of life. Research indicates that if left unchecked, the rise in obesity could lead to future decline in life expectancy. Yodisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Well, to discuss this a little further, I'm now joined here in our Nairobi studio by Fanis Kamunto, a nutritionist. Thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, what is now looking at adolescents becoming increasingly unhealthy and obesity rising amongst this age group? What is the biggest challenge in getting young people to eat healthy?
Well, I would say the biggest challenge is at home. It starts at home. The big challenge is our parents, the teenage parents. We find that parents tend to be so busy, they don't mind what the kids eat. And most of the time you find that at home there's no enough grocery, there's no healthy snacking, you know. The parents are so much in a rush to go to work, so probably the first thing to do is just give your kids some cash and go buy fast food. And then another challenge probably is obesity. Obesity is becoming a challenge because the more they continue eating fast food, the more they become more obese. And actually, you might find that with the generation nowadays, they are not so active. There's so much internet, there's so much TV to watch, so you find that they tend to gain a lot of weight, which later on in life leads to cardiovascular diseases, which is quite unhealthy.
So what are then the small changes that can happen, or at least that parents should try and focus on in the home, that can turn the tide on the rising obesity trend among young people?
First and foremost, parents should be well informed about nutrition and good and healthy eating. Yeah? So once the parents know what is healthy, they will find a way they will create time, probably to have family meals together, probably have cook meals together with their kids so that the kids can learn healthy ways of cooking. And another thing, make sure the home is equipped with, you know, healthy food, go shopping with the kids, you know, just get them involved. And as much as that is concerned, every day you need to educate your kids about healthy eating and the dangers that it has in their later on life. So just, it's good to make sure that they grow healthy. It also helps to, you know, prevent future medication bills and all that. So it starts very young.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, apart from healthy eating and the focus on food, there is also physical activity to consider. Just how important is physical activity in trying to prevent obesity?
Yes. Physical activity, the more active you are, the more calories you burn. So nutritionally speaking, what you eat, you're supposed to burn it. It's not supposed to stay in your body. So when you sweat, when you go out there, when you're in motion, when you're so active, you get to burn a lot of calories, yeah? But when you just eat and sit and just watch TV and browse and all that, you accumulate more fats in the body, and that leads to obesity. And obesity leads to very many cardiovascular diseases, including, especially when around the stomach, we find that most of the time fat accumulate around the stomach. So that leads to diabetes, that leads to heart attacks, in future, and other chronic cardiovascular diseases.
Yes. So sometimes small changes can actually save a life in the end.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Fanis Kamunto, joining us here live in our Nairobi studio on the rising trend of obesity among young people. Now, currently taking place is the official handover ceremony between the EU Council President, Donald Tusk, and the incoming President, Charles Michele. Outgoing Tusk will be standing down after 5 years at his post. He makes way for Michele, the former Belgian Prime Minister. Let's have a listen in Brussels.
The question of leading the Council is an internal Belgian-Polish matter. I don't see a reason to change it. Our common brand and objective is and should be the unity of the European Union. And I think that the specific Polish and Belgian experience can be very helpful. I am sure that you, dear Charles, will use all your talents and virtues to maintain our unity. I am very proud that for the last 5 years I have had the privilege to serve Europe. Not to serve an abstract idea, but people, nations and their common interests. Europe is the best place on earth, at least as long as it remains a continent of freedom and rule of law, which is inhabited by a community aware of its history and culture. Today I am leaving the European Council, but what is the best part of it is staying with you, dear Charles. It is them. The Union and its Council have survived thanks to their work, mutual loyalty and professionalism. You are really unique. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Without you, I wouldn't have survived even for a week. Thank you very much. I give this holy scepter into your hands, President.
And there it is, the official moment during which the leadership of the EU Council is handed over from Donald Tusk to Charles Michele. The former Belgian Prime Minister will now take over the EU Council as the president of that council. Now, turning to other news, French President Emmanuel Macron has declared that all options are open against Islamist militants in the West African Sahel region. This comes after 13 French soldiers were killed in Mali. It was the greatest single loss of French troops in nearly 4 decades. CGTN's Daniela Pearson reports.
They were killed in a mid-air collision between 2 helicopters here in Mali. 13 French soldiers lost their lives during a combat mission in pursuit of jihadist insurgents. The French President Emmanuel Macron has ordered his military to take a hard look at its operations against Islamic militants in West Africa.
La mission qui est la nôtre là-bas est importante. Néanmoins,
our mission there is an important one. That being said, the current circumstances we are going through in the Sahel lead me to consider all our strategic options. I held a first meeting yesterday, and over the coming weeks, we will dedicate ourselves to some deep-rooted work by the government and our army to look at the modalities of our intervention. And let me tell you, all the options are on the table.
Notre intervention, et je le dis, toutes les options sont aujourd'hui ouvertes.
The Sahel is the sparsely populated arid band just below the Sahara Desert, and it's become the new frontier for violent extremism. The security situation here has continued to deteriorate as militant groups with links to Al-Qaeda and ISIL strengthen their foothold. Ethnic violence is on the rise and large swathes of the region have become ungovernable. France has had a military presence in Mali since 2013. Across West Africa, there are now 4,500 French boots on the ground. Against this backdrop, Macron said that France is looking to its allies to share the counter-terrorism burden.
If anyone would like to see what cost sharing means, they can come to the ceremonies France is organizing on Monday for the dead soldiers. They'll see the cost.
Macron's government denies that France is stuck in an unwinnable conflict, but it does believe that it is bearing the brunt of a military operation that benefits all of Europe. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your business news, market jitters over the future of South African Airways has forced one of the country's largest travel ticket retailers to stop selling SAA flights. Flight Centre Travel Group has informed its customers and SAA of its decision. Meanwhile, the Travel Insurance Consultants Organisation has decided to exclude the ailing airline from its travel supplier insolvency benefit. SAA needs a government loan guarantee to continue trading. Without this, it faces either liquidation or business rescue. According to Treasury and the Public Enterprises Department, the airline needs at least $136 million immediately to pay salaries and suppliers or cease trading. Commercial banks are willing to advance the money, but only on receipt of a full loan guarantee from the government. Population explosion and the effects of climate change are posing a major threat to Africa's Western Sahel economy. Researchers from California's Berkeley University say that extreme weather conditions could adversely affect food production in a region where population is growing at a rapid pace. Nigeria's northern region is among the worst hit. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
Homes destroyed and farmlands swept away by torrential rains. They were some of the worst experienced this year. It's one of the effects of climate change, and that is likely to get even worse. There are also concerns that without intervention, temperatures in the region may rise by 3 degrees Celsius. Experts worry that this would have untold consequences on Africa's Western Sahel economy.
Some of the impacts, like increasing desertification, reduced perspiration, reduced rainfall over time, and all of this potentially leading to increased food insecurity. That's really where the challenge is.
The effects are already being felt here, especially with an unplanned growing population expected to double by the next 30 years. Rising food insecurity is paving way to mass migration and violent conflicts. What's more, government policies are poorly harmonized and implemented.
You don't have planned economies at the national level, and you don't have planned economies at the regional level. You don't have policy coherence in spite of the fact that there are ECOWAS policies, for example, AU policies and conventions, but countries are not implementing these policies in a manner that mutually reinforces one another.
Researchers say government would have to invest in 4 key areas: family planning, girl-child education, agriculture and security, without which a system collapse may be inevitable. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
On to Somalia now. The country is celebrating the resumption of banana exports for the first time in years. Phase 1 of a USAID-funded project saw the first consignment exported to Saudi Arabia. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo has more from Mogadishu.
Muhyiddin Ibrahim is a banana farmer and one of the biggest suppliers for local markets. Heavy rainfall in recent months in parts of the country has affected his business. He uses this minivan every day to supply bananas to Mogadishu from the lower Shabelle region. Bananas fetch at low prices in local markets, despite its huge demand in the capital.
The rainy season has affected the banana industry because roads have become impassable. Bananas are coming in from Afgoye. A distance of about 30 kilometers takes close to 2 hours now.
The Somali government this week announced a resumption in banana exports for the first time in years. The country's agriculture minister says the move is part of a government-led effort to revive the country's banana sector.
The export of bananas from Somalia is a testament of the government's pledge to encourage local production, including famous fruits like bananas we used to export in the past. It is my hope that this will act as an encouragement to farmers to return to their farms. The world is ready to receive our products, and we will continue to seek more markets.
The project is supported by USAID under the GALE Growth, Enterprise, Employment and Livelihoods Project. A local company was the first to export bananas to Saudi Arabia under the pilot project. Authorities now hope to target more international markets for local Somali fruits. Maslah owns a banana plantation in Beledweyne, a riverine area in central Somalia. He says the latest government announcement has encouraged him to produce high-quality products capable of competing in international markets.
Local market. For many years, bananas were only sold in local markets. We're glad that our products will now be displayed in world markets. It is a great opportunity for us farmers and those planning to venture into banana farming. Exports are good for business and we hope it will benefit us all.
Before the civil war, the banana sector was a major employer providing job opportunities to hundreds of thousands. The country was also a major hub for exports in Africa and beyond, with the country's bananas being sold in markets in Italy and several Middle Eastern countries. Abdul Aziz Bilon, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The U.S. holiday shopping season has kicked off, marking the beginning of the Christmas shopping season. But a recent survey on Amazon shows that rising costs from tariffs on Chinese products are forcing sellers to push even harder to make a profit. A report by consulting firm Jungle Scout shows that 42% of sellers on Amazon say they will have to charge more for goods imported from China due to those tariff hikes. 38% of sellers are also cutting their typical holiday discounts. However, 61% say their sales are higher than usual, which analysts attribute to the Black Friday and upcoming Cyber Monday events. In addition, the survey also shows that more than half of the Amazon sellers have offered deals and discounts to boost sales. Time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Coming up, secondary school students in Uganda learn Chinese following a review of the curriculum.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
Secondary school students in Uganda will now begin to learn the Chinese language next year. This comes after the Ministry of Education reviewed its curriculum to include Mandarin among the foreign languages taught in the country. While celebrating the 5 years of the Confucius Institute at the University of Makerere, a representative from the Ugandan government confirmed that teachers who have been studying extensively at the institute for 9 months will be the ones teaching Chinese to Ugandan students. At least 30 teachers have graduated from the institution this year with a bachelor degree in Chinese and Asian studies. The initiative is part of efforts to improve relations and integration between China and Uganda.
Recently, the Ministry of Education made a review of the curriculum, and I'm glad the Chinese language was included as one of the subjects to be taught among other foreign languages. Therefore, the work of the Confucius Institute in partnership with the Ministry of Education to train Ugandan teachers who will in turn facilitate the teaching of the Chinese come next year when the new curriculum is rolled out is a step in the right direction.
Chinese language learning is becoming more and more popular. We hope our Ugandan friends could learn more about Chinese civilization, China's ancient charm and youthful vitality today. Through learning Chinese language, we hope language learning could promote mutual understanding of our two peoples, could raise the China-Uganda comprehensive cooperative partnership to a new high, and make the flowers of Uganda-China friendship bloom with new splendor.
Your sports news coming up next. In sports, Proteas opening batsman Dean Elgar speaks about the upcoming England series.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your
We start with some breaking news now in the world of sport. Arsenal manager Unai Emery has been sacked. The Spaniard, who previously managed Paris Saint-Germain, was appointed as the Gunners' boss in May 2018, succeeding Arsene Wenger. In a statement, Arsenal has credited his sacking to poor results, their latest being a home loss to Eintracht Frankfurt on Thursday. Freddie Ljungberg is set to take over as interim manager. Now let's move to some cricket news. The opening the batting in Test cricket is often described as the toughest job in the game. CGTN's Du Plessis caught up with South Africa's opening batsman Dean Elgar and got his thoughts on his difficult task, the upcoming England series, and who decides on facing the first delivery.
Joining me today is South African opening batsman Dean Elgar. He's got 59 Test matches under his belt, a top score of 199. And today we're going to talk about what it takes to open the batting for a national team. Dean, nice to see you, bud. You all right? Good, thanks. Yeah. Before we start, before you cross this line, what's going through your mind when you're about to open an innings?
Get off the mark, eh? It's such a big thing for me in Test cricket, well, in most cricket, but more so Test cricket, is just to get off the mark. Make sure my feet's moving nicely and obviously watching the ball. I think you've got to back your preparations that you've done like 2 or 3 days before. So yeah, once you cross the line,
it's no going back, eh?
It's all about game time and game face.
Now, obviously, you come up against all sorts of different fast bowlers. You've obviously worked out your sort of idea of what's going to come your way, but still getting off the mark, I suppose, is that starting point, isn't it?
No, definitely. I mean, in Test cricket, you face the best bowlers in the world. So you've got to be quite comfortable within your skin. You've got to, like I mentioned earlier, you've got to be comfortable that your preparation is been ticked, and like basically you've ticked all the boxes before going out to play. You can't have any doubt in your mind, because I think that's already a massive challenge if you're facing the quality fast bowler with a new ball. I'd say pretty much the odds aren't on your side or in your favour, so you pretty much got to back yourself without those demons in your head.
Speaking of demons, I mean, you were probably one of the few batsmen that came out of India with less demons than other batsmen. 160, how difficult is it batting in India?
It's not easy. I'd say it's the toughest place in the world to play. I don't want to give my knock more credit, but I mean, India's a really tough place, and they're world number one for a reason. They play good cricket outside of India, and when you're in their conditions, they're absolutely going to drill you. So yeah, it was very satisfying.
It is the toughest job in the game, there's no doubt about it, opening the innings. But
I'm glad you actually confirmed that, thank you.
But there must be no more satisfying feeling than getting the triple figures. I mean, tell us, I mean, a Test 100, you've got a couple in the bag now. Tell us about that feeling. It must be cool. And I mean, imagine at a stadium like this where you've raised the bat, and you know, it's a special moment that you'll cherish, I suppose, for the rest of your life.
Definitely, that's definitely one of my goals now going into December. We're playing England here on Supersport Park, and it's my home ground. I don't have 100 here. I've got a few Test 50s, but I definitely want to get on that 100 board that's in our change room. Yeah, 3-figure mark it's always it's an exciting time for a player. I'll take 100. But I've got 12 now, and I'm extremely happy. And if I had to call it a day, I would be happy with that, because I never thought I'd have that opportunity. But it's always an exciting thing for a player to get 100 or a bowler to get a 5. Yeah, it's always nice.
What are you expecting from England? Quality team, they're World Cup winners, come with heaps of confidence. What are you expecting? It's not the first time you're facing them either, but what are you expecting here in South Africa?
I think they're also a team that's going through a change. I know they're still looking for quite a few batters within their top 6. But their bowlers are going to be quality. I know last time we played against them, yeah, they did really well, the bowlers. But I think the biggest thing that we've had of late that we're really struggling is trying to replace the guys that have been playing for 90, 100 tests. I mean, you can't just replace it overnight. And I think it's a similar thing to what England's going through now. They're doing it with their batters, and we also have that also going with our batting unit.
Thanks very much and good luck, and we'd like to see a few more hundreds.
Thanks a lot.
And over to European football. Manchester United suffered their first loss after a 2-1 loss to Kazakhstani club Astana. Jesse Lingard opened the scoreline after just 9 minutes to put the visitors ahead. In the second half, however, a chance missed by Tahith Chong saw the hosts counter, equalising the score through Dimitri Shomko in the 54th minute. Astana completed the comeback in the 62nd after an own goal from 19-year-old defender Deshaun Bernard, who deflected Antonio Rukavina's cross. United manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says it was disappointing to lose, but was impressed with the team's performance.
Yeah, of course we're disappointed with the end result. But I thought we started the game fantastically. The boys they took control of the game, scored a fantastic goal, and the response after they scored two was also good. Of course, disappointed at little 10-minute spell where you could feel the pressure was coming. We couldn't get on the ball as we did, but some fantastic performances by the three young lads who made their debut. All were excellent.
Elsewhere, Wolves booked their place in the knockouts after a 3-3 draw against Braga in Group